Onyeka Okongwu only played 23 minutes a night last season, but after this video, you're going to understand why he should probably be playing a lot more than that. Not only does Okongwu pass the eye test, which we're going to get into a lot of film on that, but his numbers are pretty ridiculous considering how limited of a role he's had up to this point. This video is going to serve as a showcase of a guy that I think is one of the most underrated young centers in the entire league right now, and he has been for a while. But I'm also going to touch on something that I think is a little bit of a controversial topic, and specifically it has to do with how certain rules in the NBA are enforced right now, and how officials kind of pick and choose which rules they're going to enforce on any given night. And if you're not sure what I mean by any of that, just stick around, we're going to get into it. To start this discussion off, let's set the table a little bit. The Atlanta Hawks had the 21st overall defense in the NBA last season, allowing 116.3 points per 100 possessions, which is just a little bit higher than league average. And remember, this is defensive rating, so higher is not a good thing. What's interesting for Atlanta is that whenever Okongwu was on the floor for them last season, that defensive rating improved to the point where they were allowing only 114.7 points per 100 possessions, which is a number that would have made them an above average team defensively. And when he wasn't on the floor, their defense was even worse at 117.7 points per 100 possessions. Now, there are obviously some conflating variables that can muddy the waters when it comes to defensive rating, but as far as defensive anchors go, Okongwu is really, really good, and we probably haven't even seen the best of his overall defensive impact just yet. From these defensive anchor type of centers, of course, something that's expected is for them to rack up the blocks, and at a glance, you might see that Okongwu only averaged 1.3 blocks per game last season, which doesn't really seem like a lot. But if you extrapolate that number out to per 36 minutes of play, it comes out to 2.1 blocks per game, which when we start diving into the film, you're going to see why that number makes a lot more sense. One thing that jumps out to me with Okongwu is the diversity of his blocks. Some guys play a very specific role that puts them in positions to succeed. Guys that operate as exclusively weak side help defenders or paint roamers, they're going to be set up to get blocks more often than somebody who has to play to the level of the screen or step out to the perimeter every now and then, or guys that guard a lot of post-ups. Okongwu already provides elite weak side help defense, which is one of the biggest pieces of value that he provides for a team that has a few holes around the edges on that end of the floor. It isn't just the fact that he's getting blocks, it's the fact that he's able to make up for any mistakes that might allow guys to get good lanes to the basket. With him there to provide help and clean things up, it mitigates some of the weaknesses that the Hawks have on the perimeter. This off-ball prowess is great, but his ability to be a brick wall when guarding in one-on-one situations accentuates that value even more. He's a very patient post defender, and it's not often that he's going to get caught biting on pump fakes, and even if he does, he's quick and athletic enough to not allow getting beat once to prevent him from going right back up immediately after, so he can still manage to get a hand on the ball. One of his biggest strengths is actually his strength. He doesn't really have any issue dealing with bigger centers just because of how strong he is. He doesn't get pushed back very much, and he does a great job of making his matchups in the post as uncomfortable as possible so that he can get them off of their spots or make them settle and pass out. His presence provides something that longtime subscribers know that I harp on a lot, and that's rim deterrence. The idea that the sheer presence of a player can make teams reconsider even trying to get to the rim in the first place. The result is ball handlers often settling for low percentage mid-range looks or just having to reset the offense entirely. Shots at the rim are still the most statistically valuable shot in basketball, so if you can try and deter the opposing team from shooting in that area, then you're making them miss out on valuable scoring opportunities and restricting their offense a lot. So let's pivot over to the offensive side of the ball. This is where we're going to get into some of that controversial stuff that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. We can start this discussion by looking at how effective of a screener Okongwu is. He keeps the defender stuck on his hip. He gives Trae Young plenty of time to get downhill so that he can get to his spot and get his floaters off. This play is cool because after he gets Jrue Holiday stuck trying to navigate the screen, he rolls to the basket, which forces Giannis to fall back into the paint, and then he's going to clear the way for Trae to get by Jrue and get the shot to fall at the rim. Now, I know some of you guys are already typing in the comments and know what's controversial that I'm going to talk about, and it's the fact that technically, Okongwu commits a ton of illegal screens. He'll oftentimes continue to move after initially setting the screen, and he also sets a lot of wide base screens, which are, according to the NBA's official rulebook, not legal. This is something that's not just limited to Okongwu. Look at a guy like Draymond Green. He's been getting called out for illegal screens for a long time now. Guys like Domantas Sabonis, Bam Adebayo, even Nikola Jokic are all players that are guilty of either just blatantly committing illegal screens or using illegal screening techniques to generate space for their ball handlers. This isn't something that's unique to Okongwu. To me, this prompts an actually pretty interesting question. Is being able to set illegal screens without getting caught or getting called for it a skill on its own? Now, I'm not saying that he's only a good screener because he occasionally sets an illegal screen without getting caught. A lot of these clips are showcasing perfectly legal screens, but he does benefit from the fact that either A, he's just good at not getting caught, or B, the officials just don't care to call illegal screens anymore. I think it's probably a little bit of both. Similar to how some defenders are smart enough to know how to get away with contact without getting called for a foul, Okongwu and other bigs that screen as frequently and effectively as he does, they know how to get away with it without getting called for it most of the time, and also refs just don't care. Regardless, it's worth noting just how good the chemistry is between Trae and Okongwu in this area of the game. It's one of the reasons why I'm not really worried if the Hawks decide to trade Clint Capella, and I actually think that they should, which is something I'm going to touch on at the end of the video. Okongwu knows exactly what to do to most effectively complement Trae's ability to score in the pick and roll. Trae is a good shooter when you can get him open in the mid-range, so one thing Okongwu does a really good job of is timing his rolls to the basket so that he can pull the drop coverage away from around the free throw line, and it usually results in some space for Trae to pull up. On this high pick and roll, Trae encounters Biyombo in the drop, and Wainwright's going to be trailing right behind him. So to clear some space, Okongwu keeps his roll going to get Biyombo out of the way, and it allows Trae to step through and get to the rim for the finish. He knows how his presence as a roll man is going to impact the defense, so he's consciously using that to generate space for Trae. On top of all of this, he's a great lob threat, providing just as much, if not more, vertical spacing as Capella when it comes to being a rim-running big man. But the thing that really excites me about his game is the fact that he has slowly but surely been developing a mid-range shot. He actually shot a well above league average 46% from mid-range last year, and that was on a pretty meaningful volume of 144 total attempts. He was actively taking these shots when defenses seemed to be content with allowing them, and he was making them pay at a high enough rate that eventually they're gonna have to start guarding him. After all, he's almost completely wide open and not being contested at all in most of these shots, so the question is gonna be if his efficiency remains as high as it is once defenses start to honor him. But if they do start to step out of the paint and defend him as a mid-range threat, then that's going to subsequently open up some opportunities for Atlanta's offense. If opposing centers have to step out from down low to come out and contest him, will this open up the avenue for things like backdoor cuts by guys on the wings? And if Okongwu can help facilitate those opportunities, it's going to add an entirely new dynamic to Atlanta's offense. Okongwu is a really exciting young center, and he's only 22 years old. He's shown more than enough over the course of the past 3 years, and especially last season, that I really think he should be stepping into the starting role for Atlanta, especially if their goal is to make the playoffs and make a deep playoff push, which I'm assuming that's the case. Clint Capella isn't a bad player by any means, but I'm not sure how necessary he is anymore. I feel like Okongwu brings a lot of the same things to the table, and there's a lot of stuff that he does better than Capella. Regardless, I think it's definitely time that he gets an increased role from Atlanta, and they're going to benefit a ton from it. If you guys enjoyed this video and you want to see more like this, as always, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, all that fun stuff. If you want to support the channel further, you can go check out my Patreon. There's a link in the description. I actually just posted a new article over there last week about scoring frequency in the NBA and how the volume of shots from three, from mid-range, and at the rim has changed over the last decade. I had a lot of fun writing it. There's a lot of interesting stuff in there, so go check that out. Regardless, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.